Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Wilder versus Parker fight. If you are new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, of course, this is my second prediction for this card now. Like I mentioned in the Anthony Joshua prediction that I did, I'm going to be doing a prediction for this fight as well as the Anthony Joshua one, which I've done now. And then tomorrow I'm going to be releasing a full card prediction for all the rest of the fights on the card. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. I just thought I'd give you that as a heads up because it's unlike what I normally do, just because of how good the whole card is of this card. But yeah, going into this fight, Wilder is 43-2-1 with 42 KOs, and Park is 33-3 with 23 KOs. This fight is a 12-round fight in the heavyweight division. Wilder's last fight was a win via KO in round 1 versus Helenius back in October of 2022. Parker's last fight was a win via KO in round 3 versus Keane. Wilder is 38 and Parker is 31. Wilder is 6'7" with an 83-inch reach, and Parker is 6'4" with a 76-inch reach. Wilder's losses have come versus Fury in 2021 and 2020. Parker's losses have come versus Joyce in 2022, White in 2018, and Joshua in 2018. Sorry, got hiccups during that. So yeah, just to say about what I've just said there, of course, it's Wilder returning back to the ring out of over a year out, and it's nice to see him. He of course makes the division more entertaining when he is fighting, and so I'm sure it's going to be another entertaining fight here. And I mean, Parker, it's tough opposition. Parker obviously he had the defeat to Joe Joyce, but he's on a good run now and he's returning back to winning ways, and he's coming off 2 stoppage wins, and that means he's got a bit of momentum about him, maybe a bit of confidence himself coming into this fight. And I think it does make for a good matchup for Wilder to make his return, and then to hopefully, if he does go on to win as well as Joshua, to then set up the huge fight in around maybe March, April time next year. Of course, like I said, Wilder has been out for a while, but the last fight they did have, the win against Helenius, was a very, very impressive knockout. It was a easy performance, really. It was a fight which people maybe expected to be a little bit more tougher, or maybe expect to go a couple more rounds, but Wilder was just as destructive as ever and landed a KO shot without really much putting into it. It was just a shot which he just kind of threw out on the back foot when he was kind of countering a shot, and it just ended up to absolutely slump Helenius. And it shows how much power he does have, if anybody really even needed to prove in that. But I suppose to himself it added more confidence coming back from the fights with Fury, and we haven't really seen much of Wilder since them Fury fights. We haven't seen if that's taken anything out of him, and I suppose if we go into a later rounds in this fight, then we could definitely see how he's dealing in these later rounds. And like I mentioned, if them fights have taken out of him, and I'm sure it has, because it was a very grueling set of 3 fights, and you can deny it all he wants, I'm sure it has taken something out of him. And he's been away from the ring, like I mentioned. He's not even been focusing on boxing. He's been doing other things. He's seemingly enjoying his life outside of boxing, and maybe not the drive has gone, but maybe the excitement for the sport has gone a little bit for him now. And I don't know, maybe he's just might not get up for this fight quite as much. I'm not too sure, but that's, I suppose, to wait and see. Like I mentioned, Parker got 2 consecutive KO victories. I mean, he also got a win versus Jack Massey, which wasn't an amazing performance, but he's gone a bit of a run now, and he's showing to people that he can still fight. He's still got it in him to win and to stop opponents, and people weren't really sure how good he was looking from the fights versus Joyce and a couple of performances like against Derek Chisora and a few fights he'd have. People weren't too sure how good he really was, but now, I mean, the opponents he's been against recently haven't been crazily high level, but like I say, he's been asserting himself a bit more, and that's only really going to give him confidence. Like I mentioned, Wilder being the older guy, and like I say, being out for a while, is that going to play a factor? I mean, the older you get, eventually it will end up catching up to you, and like I say, if he's not been strict training throughout the whole time, then it could be playing a factor. And with the age, you never know if that might end up catching up to him. And Parker arguably being in his prime years, really, physically, and that could definitely play a factor with this. Wilder being a much bigger guy with a much longer reach, it's it's a big difference, really. I mean, 6'7", 6'4", maybe he doesn't sound massive, but when he has an 83-inch reach and he uses that reach so well, he like I say, utilizes that so well, and it's very dominating for him, and it means he can get shots off from multiple different angles, which you don't really expect, and it just means that anything that's going to land as well, it's going to hurt, and it's hard to stay away from him a whole night and a whole fight, and not many fighters have been able to do so. Obviously, he's had the defeats versus Fury, but Parker, like I say, he's had defeats as well. The Joyce one was probably one of the more worse out fights, especially as of recent. I mean, people were seeing him as a very tough, durable fighter who had a very good chin before that Joyce fight, but that Joyce fight really showed that there was weaknesses there, and into the later rounds, and when he did get stopped, it was a bad stoppage, and is that going to play a factor for himself? And like I've mentioned, he's been more active this year, but he's not, like I mentioned, been against the overly high opposition, and in the past, when he has taken that step up, he's sometimes seemed a bit demotivated and not been willing to push quite as much if things aren't going his way, and I don't feel like he can be going with that mindset into a fight like this, such a huge fight like this. So, as fighters, Wilder, I mean, everybody knows he's got immense power. It's crazy power. It's uncontrollable power. It's he's the most powerful guy arguably in the world. Like it's so impressive how powerful he is, and it's just unstoppable. And like I say, he does add entertainment to the division whenever he fights, because of that power is always there, and the fact that he can just land from any position, any angle, and then just be able to completely knock people out from it. And like I say, it's very, very impressive. And with that long reach, like I mentioned, he can hurt from every angle. He can throw awkward shots. He can be slightly unpredictable at times, and that can also play a factor as well. It's always the shots that you least expect, or from the angles that you least expect, that also hurt the most, and on top of the fact that he's got that power as well. Of course, he's going to be going into this fight, in my opinion, I think he's going to be confident, possibly too confident, possibly might be overlooking Parker, but I think a confident Wilder is a good Wilder. I think the days where he was complaining and saying things about the Fury fight and things like that have gone, and I think he's a new person now to an extent, and he's coming with a new mentality, a new mindset, a new refreshed mindset, and with that timeout, I think that is going to add that element of that, maybe getting the enjoyment back for the sport again, and coming in and actually just wanting to put in a relaxed, good, confident performance, and I think we're going to end up seeing that here. Like I say, he's physically strong. He's most definitely physically stronger than Parker, and being the taller guy as well helps a lot. He will hurt everybody at some point in the fight. You can be tough and you can take a shot against him, but I mean, not many fighters can, and if you can, then if he keeps adding on a couple more, then it's very hard to then be able to take more than one against him, let alone one in itself, a big shot against him, or I suppose any shots. He's very efficient with his work. He can only really throws out shots which he knows are going to hurt and cause damage, and that's what he did against Helenius exactly. I think he threw about 3 shots against Helenius throughout the whole one round that was there. I mean, he threw 2 jabs and then did the shot that knocked him out. So it's efficient, it's effective work, and it's, like I say, why he's gotten so many knockouts. He does scare opponents, and he can definitely bring fear into opponents and make them want to second guess themselves and make them unsure what they want to do, because of how knowingly they know of his power and how much they know they're going to have to deal with it at some point. He does use his reach well. He finds them awkward angles, like I mentioned. He pushes through guards and pushes his punches through. He is gaining a bit of patience, I think. I think he is gaining a bit more patience now, and against Helenius, even though it was in the first round knockout, I think he is gaining a bit more patience and picking his shots a little bit better than he ever has in the past, and he's going away from being quite such a wild fighter. I think he is, and he's not becoming hesitant like people saying that Joshua has, but he's becoming a little bit more patient and picking his shots a little bit better now. He has heart. I mean, he's proven that in the Fury fights, that he can go full distant rounds against top level opposition and showcase that he's still got it there in the later rounds and be hurt and come back from that. And he's got definitely heart, and I think he is a bit more of a mid-range type fighter though, and that mid-range is not where you're going to want to be. I mean, I've heard Parker's coach talking about it. He's saying that you either want to be up close with him and really trying to push it against him, or just being out of range completely. and then occasionally trying to counter shots. That's your best bet against Wilder, because you can't sit at a mid distance against him, because he will make you pay for doing that. Negatives about him, I mean, technical ability's never really been showing that. Obviously, I think his patience is improving, but I still think technically he's not anything technical wise amazing. I think if he didn't have his power and he didn't have that whole kind of thing about him, then I don't know how good of a fighter he would be, but of course he does, and it means the technical aspect to an extent doesn't matter quite so much. I don't feel like he sets up his shots amazing. He sets it off a jab relatively well, but I don't think it's as well as possibly it could be. He definitely overcommits. He's definitely wild, can be reckless with them hooks, where they in the past have definitely just been wild overhands. He's not really got much defensive movement. He's most definitely there to be hit, and he has been hurt in fights, and a few fights now, and he shows that you can hurt him. And Parker in his own right has got power himself. I know everybody's talking about Wilder's power, but Parker does have power himself, and especially if you're catching Wilder in a counter with a counter, which Parker knows how to do, or knows how to counter, then you could definitely hurt him. And like I say, he has been hurt. He can struggle against boxers who possibly move well, but like I say, it's very hard to move well throughout the whole fight against somebody who takes up so much of the ring. He can tire, so can Parker to an extent, so I don't know how it would be fair, and if both of these fighters went into the later rounds. He can possibly rely on his power a bit too much, and he's not really experienced fighters that have loads of speed, and Parker is known for his fast hands, and so that could definitely be a bit of a different experience for Wilder. Like I said, I don't feel like he's really faced too many fighters with crazy speed. I mean, Luis Ortiz maybe, but not crazy speed, I don't feel like yet. And Parker is not crazy, but I think it's one of the better in the heavyweight division in my opinion, and that's arguably what he's most known for, really. Parker as a fighter though, I mean, he's going to be coming in with this underdog mentality. I feel like he's had to face it a few times now, and I feel like he's used to having that underdog mentality. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know, but I would definitely say he's most used to that now. He has fought at a high level for a long time. He's had experience at a high level for a long time. He's an ex-world champion, I believe, and he's definitely had that experience at the top level and knows how to fight and even win to an extent against top level fighters. In the past, he has done so. He can box well early. He's a skilled boxer and does have good timing, and they're all things that could definitely play into his hands against Wilder. He's accurate. His work is precise. It is accurate. He can box on the outside well and move well. He counters well. He's being active, like I mentioned. He is most definitely the faster fighter out of the two. He's a solid mover, changes levels well, good combination puncher. There's definitely things there to hurt Wilder and to definitely counteract Wilder's power and his aggression, and it's just down to if he's able to do so. The negatives about Parker: he slows down later on in fights. He's been hurt now, and like I say, he does slow down. He can become a bit inconsistent into the later rounds. He can lose his lack of urgency in big fights and not want to push the fight so much. If he feels like he's losing, he can kind of lose his morale, lose his will to really force the fight, and I don't know, I feel like it is just a lack of aggression from him, really, to really want to push the tempo and push fighters even when they possibly do get hurt. I think it was the White fight where he hurt White and possibly could have got him out, but he just didn't push it enough and didn't use his aggressiveness enough and his power enough to get him out of there. And I feel like that is just something where he can become just a bit unbothered in a fight and can just lose interest a bit. He has been hurt himself, like I mentioned now. His defense can decline later on in rounds. His chin, is it going to be the same as what it was? You don't really know. He's got good defensive movement, but I don't feel like it's crazily good, and I feel like he is going to be able to get caught after a while against Wilder. He does switch off in fights, like I've kind of been mentioning, and he can struggle a bit against bigger guys as well, and this Wilder is one of the biggest guys in the division, so that's definitely a factor there. Wilder is the favourite in this fight, and I think that Wilder is going to win via TKO in round 6. I think Parker could find success off a jab or off responding to Wilder's possibly wild early shots, but then I feel like Wilder is going to become a bit more patient coming into the 4th to 5th to 6th round, try and pick his shots a bit better. Then it could be a straight 1-2, it could be, I don't know if it'll be a hook, but I think it's most likely, in my opinion, going to be a straight shot, which I think is going to hurt Parker, because I think Parker's going to be moving, but I think Wilder's going to be able to close the range with a straight shot and then be able to hurt him for off of that. and then at that point I think it's going to be way too much for Parker to be able to deal with, and then he's going to get knocked out into round six, and then who's he going to fight then? I mean, in my opinion, it has to be Joshua. Of course, if Joshua wins against Wallin, which I think he is, I suppose I've spoiled my prediction there, but if you want to see that, go watch that. But that it has to be the Joshua fight next, in my opinion. Of course, if they both win. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like if you did, like, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.